Somewhere on Earth right now, a person is alive who will never die of old age. They might be a baby, asleep in a crib tonight. They might be you. For every single human who has ever lived, every pharaoh, every king, every ancestor of yours going back 100,000 years, one rule has never once been broken. You are born, you grow, you age, and you die. 100 billion people, zero exceptions. But that rule is not a law of physics. It's not written into the universe, it's a biological problem. And for the first time in the history of our species, serious scientists, not fortune tellers, not cult leaders, scientists in real laboratories, believe that problem might actually have a solution. They even have a name for the moment it happens. They call it escape velocity. The point where, for every year you stay alive, science buys you back more than a year. And once you cross that line, the clock stops counting down. It starts counting up. Future humans may look back at death the way we look back at smallpox, not as fate, as a disease we finally cured. So the question isn't as crazy as it sounds. Will future humans stop dying? Let's actually find out. To understand how anyone could beat death, you have to understand what's actually killing you. And it's probably not what you think. We say people die of heart disease, of cancer, of stroke, of dementia. Those are the names on the certificates. But underneath almost all of them is a single deeper cause. The one thing that makes all of those diseases dramatically more likely: aging itself. Think about it. A cancer that would be a death sentence for an 80-year-old is often survivable for a 20-year-old with the same tumor. The disease didn't change. The body did. As you age, everything gets more fragile, more flammable, more likely to fail. Aging is the soil that every other disease grows in. And here's the idea that flips a light on in your head the first time you hear it. For most of history, we've been fighting the diseases one at a time. Cure cancer and heart disease is waiting. Cure heart disease and dementia is waiting. You're fighting the branches. Aging is the root. So a growing group of scientists asked a heretical question. What if we stopped treating aging as an inevitable background fact of life and started treating it as a disease, a process with mechanisms, with causes, and therefore maybe with a cure? Because a disease can be fought, a disease can be slowed, and if you're very ambitious, a disease can be beaten. Now, before we get to immortality, we have to talk about a mistake, because modern medicine already tried to extend human life, and it half succeeded in the cruelest possible way. Over the last century, we roughly doubled human life expectancy. That sounds like a miracle, and in many ways it was. But look closer at what we actually did. We got very good at stopping people from dying. We did not get good at keeping them young. So we created a strange new chapter of human life that barely existed before. A long, slow decline. Years, sometimes decades, spent frail, in pain, minds fading, bodies failing, kept alive, but not kept well. We stretched the lifespan without stretching the health span. The number of years you're alive went up. The number of years you're actually healthy did not keep pace. And this is the key that unlocks the whole field. The goal was never just to add more years to the end of life, more time in the waiting room. The real goal, the one that changes everything, is to compress that decline to nothing, to keep you biologically young right up until the end, not a longer old age, a longer youth, which raises the wild possibility. If you could keep someone biologically 30 indefinitely, then old age as a cause of death would simply stop existing. And that's not science fiction anymore. That's a research program. So how would you actually do it? It starts with something living inside you right now that a lot of people have never even heard of. Inside your body, there are cells that should be dead, but aren't. As you go through life, your cells divide, take damage, and eventually some of them stop working properly. Normally, a broken cell politely self destructs and gets cleared away, but some don't. They refuse to die, and they refuse to do their job. Scientists call them senescent cells. Everyone else calls them what they basically are, zombie cells. And they're not just sitting there quietly. Zombie cells leak out a stream of inflammatory signals that damage the healthy cells around them. One zombie cell turns its neighbors toxic. They pile up as you age, and they are now believed to be one of the direct engines of getting old. The stiffness, the inflammation, the slow breakdown. You are, in a real sense, being poisoned from the inside by cells that won't leave. So here's the obvious question a scientist asks. What if we just killed them? Cleared the zombies out? They tried it. In animals. There's now a class of drugs called senolytics, whose entire job is to hunt down these zombie cells and destroy them while leaving the healthy ones alone. And when researchers gave them to old mice, something remarkable happened. The mice got stronger, their fur grew back, they ran further, their hearts and kidneys worked better. Some of them lived meaningfully longer. Researchers were, in a limited but real way, making old animals young again by taking something away. Now, mice are not people, and this is the honest catch we'll keep coming back to. But clearing the zombie cells is only the first tool. The next one doesn't remove damage, it rewinds it. Here's a fact about you that sounds impossible. Every one of your cells contains the exact same DNA, the same full instruction book, and yet a skin cell and a brain cell are completely different. How? Because on top of your DNA sits a second layer of information, a set of chemical notes that decides which instructions each cell reads and which it ignores. Scientists call it the epigenome. Think of the DNA as the piano and the epigenome as which keys get pressed. And here's the discovery that shook the field. As you age, that second layer gets messy. The notes smudge. Cells start reading the wrong instructions. A lot of researchers now believe aging isn't only about damage piling up. It's partly about your cells forgetting which cells they're supposed to be. Aging as a loss of information. But if aging is information getting scrambled, then in theory, the information could be restored. And it turns out there's a known way to reset that second layer. A specific combination of factors can wind a cell's biological clock back toward a younger state, without erasing what kind of cell it is. Scientists call it reprogramming. When researchers carefully applied this to animals, partially cautiously, they reversed signs of aging. They restored sight to old mice by making the cells in the eye biologically younger. They took old tissue and made it behave young again. They found what looks like a rewind button hidden inside the machinery of life itself. This is the science that some of the richest people on Earth are now pouring billions of dollars into. Entire companies exist for nothing but this, to figure out how to safely press that button in a living human being. And if they ever do, the meaning of the word old changes forever. Quick thing before the part that genuinely stunned me. If a future where humans stop aging is the kind of question that keeps you up at night in the best way, subscribe. This whole channel is about where our species is actually headed. Okay, back to it. Because nature, it turns out, already solved this. Twice. Here's the part that should make you sit up. Everything we've talked about, stopping aging, refusing to break down, nature already figured it out. There are animals alive right now that essentially do not age. Start with the naked mole rat. It's a wrinkled, nearly blind little rodent that lives underground, and it is a biological miracle. A mouse its size lives a couple of years. The naked mole rat can live past 30, but the truly strange part isn't just how long it lives, it's that it barely seems to age at all. Its risk of dying doesn't climb the way it does for almost every other animal, including us. An old naked mole rat is about as likely to die tomorrow as a young one. It also almost never gets cancer. It is, for all practical purposes, running on rules we thought were impossible. Then there's the animal that goes even further. There's a species of jellyfish, barely bigger than a fingernail, that scientists literally call the immortal jellyfish. When it's injured, starving, or old, it doesn't die. It reverts. It turns its own body back into an earlier stage of life, the biological equivalent of an old person melting back into a child, and then grows up all over again. It can, in principle, do this indefinitely, a loop with no built-in end. And these aren't the only ones. Certain hydra show no signs of aging. Some lobsters keep producing an enzyme that seems to protect them from getting old in the normal way. Life, it turns out, did not hand every creature the same death sentence we assumed was universal. This is the single most important fact in the whole field, and here's why. Biological immortality is not against the rules of nature. We have living proof, swimming and burrowing around the planet right now, that a body can refuse to age. The question was never, is it possible? Nature already answered that. The question is only, can we learn to do it too? So let's put it all together into the idea from the very beginning. Escape velocity. Here's the logic, and it's beautiful. Right now, roughly speaking, every year that passes, medicine adds a few extra months to average human life expectancy. You live a year, science claws back a few months. So the clock still wins. It counts down slower, but it counts down. But imagine that pace of progress speeds up. Imagine a year comes when, for every 12 months you live, science figures out how to give you more than 12 months back. Better drugs, cleared zombie cells, a working reset button, all improving faster than you're aging. At that exact moment, something strange happens to the math. The finish line starts running away from you faster than you're walking toward it. You are no longer approaching death. You're outrunning it. Stay alive long enough to reach the next breakthrough, and that breakthrough keeps you alive long enough to reach the one after that. You bridge, gap by gap, across a chasm that used to be a dead end. That's longevity, escape velocity. And the wild implication is this: the first person to live for a very, very long time might not need us to invent full-blown immortality today. They just need to live long enough and stay healthy enough to catch the wave when it comes, which is exactly why some people alive today are treating the next couple of decades as the most important gamble of their lives. Because this isn't only happening in labs and journals. There are people out there today living as if the finish line is real and racing to reach it. Some of them are just very rich and very afraid to die. The same tech billionaires who reshaped how you communicate and shop have quietly turned their fortunes toward the one thing money has never been able to buy: more time. They're funding the reprogramming companies, the anti-aging research, the whole field, on a scale governments never have. Others are running the experiment on themselves. There are people who now track hundreds of markers in their own bodies, follow brutally strict routines, take dozens of measurements a day, all with a single stated goal: don't die. To personally survive long enough to reach escape velocity. Whether it works or not, watching someone treat their own aging as a bug to be patched in real time tells you the mindset has already crossed over from fantasy into strategy. And it forces a question onto all of us that used to be purely philosophical. If living far longer becomes something you can buy, who gets it first? Because the honest answer, at least at the start, is the people who can afford it. Which brings us to the part of this that isn't hopeful at all. Let's be honest, because a good version of this story has to be. Beating aging might not be the paradise it sounds like. It might come with problems just as big as the one it solves. Start with fairness. If the first treatments cost a fortune, then for a while, maybe a long while, death becomes optional only for the wealthy. Picture a world split in two. a class of people who age and die the way humans always have, and above them, a class who simply don't. Every inequality we already argue about would harden into something close to biological. That's not a utopia. That's the setup for the darkest story you can imagine. Then there's the planet. Humans are already many billions, and part of the reason the population turns over is that generations pass on. Take death off the table and leave birth on it, and the arithmetic gets frightening fast. A world where almost no one leaves is a world that fills up. And then there's the quietest problem of all, the one you feel rather than calculate. Would you even want it? A lot of what gives life its weight, its urgency, its meaning, comes from the fact that it ends. The deadline is part of the point. Some people hear you could live for centuries and feel hope. Others hear it and feel a kind of horror. The same job, the same self, the same everything, stretching on with no natural end. Immortality and being trapped can start to sound like the same sentence. None of this proves we shouldn't do it. But anyone who promises you that curing death is purely good is selling you something. The future humans who stop dying, if they exist, will inherit a whole new set of problems that we, the mortals, never had to face. So, will future humans stop dying? Not tomorrow. Probably not for a very long time. And maybe never completely. Because even if you cure aging, a bus can still find you. Accidents don't care about your telomeres. Stop dying of old age was never the same as can't die. Let's be clear about that. But go back to where we started. To that baby, asleep in a crib tonight. For the first time in 100,000 years, we genuinely can't promise that child the one thing we could always promise every human before them, that their body will inevitably wear out and stop. The zombie cells can be cleared. The clock in animals can be rewound. Nature has already built creatures that don't age, and somewhere the finish line may be starting to move. 10,000 years from now, future humans might tell their children about us. The people who simply accepted that everyone gets old and dies, the way we accept the tide. And they might find it almost impossible to understand. The way you find it almost impossible to imagine losing half your children to disease. The way every generation before your great-grandparents just did. To them, death by aging might be a story from the primitive past, from back when humans still had a deadline. So here's what I actually want to know from you. If it were real, if you could stop your body from ever aging, would you do it? Live for centuries, watch the world change, but never grow old? Or is the ending the part that makes it all mean something? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and this is the one question where I honestly don't know what the right answer is. Because for now, we still have a deadline. The future humans might not.